Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Today I am joined by Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown podcast. How you doing today, Clint?
I'm good, brother. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Honestly, I think the libertarian or liberty movement has some of the best podcasts and some of the best fans. It's just it's a really interesting circle to be in, honestly.
I agree, dude. I mean, it's funny. I was actually just thinking about this yesterday because I watch, Real Time with Bill Maher every week because I want to understand what my enemies are thinking. And I swear to God, like when I watch that, when I watch CNN, when I watch even Fox News, the guests that they have and stuff like that, I'm like, these people aren't anywhere near as brilliant as the people I have on my show regularly. Like it
Agreed.
really it's really mind-blowing the caliber of human being I get to interact with now. I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even interviewing other hosts, I'm like, all of us are out here being the spearhead, the mouthpiece of the movement. And honestly, it's just really cool to be within that weird little family of motley crew people. It's just
For sure.
it's a lot of fun. So let's just jump into it. One thing I wanna cover just real quick. Do you want to give people a little bit of your background, like what you did for work before you started the podcast and moved down to Florida?
Yeah, sure. I was just a private money mortgage broker, which means essentially what a bank does, but when someone either needs the money fast or they can't qualify because they're self-employed, things like that. But instead of using Federal Reserve funds, Fannie Freddie, um, I actually had private investors that would through me funnel their capital to the borrower. So that was my job as the underwriter, was to make sure that that investment was sound, that it was prudent and likely to perform.
So let's see. So you pretty much were like the yes or no man.
Yeah, that's what an underwriter is in pretty much any lending institution. But I was the primary broker and the only employee. I had other people that I had contract work with, but I didn't have any employees, and I just did it all myself, and it was great. I brokered a couple or many hundreds of millions of dollars over my career, and it was a very gratifying experience. Got a good return on investment for my investors. They were all thrilled and very disappointed when I retired when the lockdowns happened, but it is what it is.
And where were you at the time?
San Diego, California.
Oh, yeah, I see why you left.
Yeah. So, I mean, San Diego is the greatest place on earth, but the state of California is unfortunately not.
Yeah. I always had a lot of fun in Old Town. That
Yeah.
was always fun down there.
Old Town's great. Downtown's pretty great too. I mean, there's starting to be increasing, drug addiction and homelessness issues, but it's still a very magical place and will always hold a special place in my heart. I pray for the people there that they can, prior to some sort of communist collapse, they can reform the government, but doesn't look likely, and it doesn't look to be coming anytime soon. So I did what I had to do and fled.
So what was the moment to where you were just like, okay, that's it. I've had enough. I'm out.
Uh, this is a true story. Um, the first time a homeless person shit in my front yard, uh, I literally, because
It's
I was
not
a
funny, but it's the
yeah.
funniest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I was I was also a real estate broker, so I literally the same day I listed my home for sale, and that was in I think it was January of 2021. So it was like 6 months into lockdowns, give or take, and I was done, man.
Yeah. Uh, you know, what happened to the shit? Did you pick it up or just leave it?
No, I had to pick it up. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
have a choice. It's my it's my property, and the cops don't do anything about homelessness issues. So it's like
Yeah.
I just knew at that point, like, all right, this is San Diego is now verging on LA, San Francisco type issues. And I had always said I would never want to live in those places. So when I realized that my hometown was becoming that, I was like, all right, yeah, not this isn't the right spot for me.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand when a city starts having to have a budget for some sort of like task force or something to take care of shit, you know, you're not in a good city.
Yeah, no, for sure, and even worse, if you need that task force, but you don't have one, then
Yeah, exactly.
you're like, "Oh my god,
Exactly.
this is really problematic." So, yeah, I was out of there.
So, one thing I wanted to talk about, the reason I was, you know, having you explain what you had done before is because I wanted to make sure everyone knew that you kind of know this stuff and you're not just some, you know, libertarian autist
Yeah.
like some
Well,
of us.
I'm that too. I'm that
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. In addition to, you also have experience in this.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
honestly, like, the biggest differentiator that I have from the other people in this sphere is that,
yeah,
I really did walk the walk when it came to, using our philosophy when it comes to economics, but in the real world, a lot of us are well read, but not enough of us have actually done it, and I did for a long time. So,
yeah. An,
it
an
gives me
actual
a
application.
yeah, it gives me a greater level of expertise, and real world application that allows me to kind of have tested our ideas in reality as opposed to just the theoretical.
So the thing I wanted to talk about was ESG, environmental social governance. Do you want to explain for everybody exactly like what that is, how it's applied, like we're all 5 year olds?
Sure. Uh, ESG is an acronym. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. It was the brainchild of the United Nations in 2004, and I mean it. The conceptually, the idea behind it began many decades prior, but in terms of it being implemented at the highest level of governments as well as the highest level of big business globally, that's really the inflection point by which it started to become a real threat to humanity. And I'll explain why. So ESG was through the UN dictate. They then partnered with the World Economic Forum and a bunch of other, globalist entities. They sent out a letter to the 50 the CEOs of the 50 biggest corporations on earth at the time, and they said, "Hey, this is what we are interested in doing. Basically, we want to have public private partnerships, aka fascism, to deal with all that ails humanity, but primarily focused on global warming and anthropogenic global warming specifically, which I think is a fatally flawed thesis to begin with. But then there's also the arguments against having corporations that are trying to, implement their will on the world, even if you believe that the premise is good, that may not be the best way to do things, particularly when a CEO of a business has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders over, the stakeholders, the people that live in the countries of which he's doing business. So, like, I I have many levels of opposition to this, but because I was a fiduciary, I take this very personally in the sense that what it means to be a fiduciary as a money manager is you have to put the interests of your investors over your own. You can't do that if you are operating in a fashion that isn't focused on the bottom line, that isn't focused on profit to make sure that your investors get a proper return, but is rather focused on some sort of airy fairy utopic vision for the world. And I think that they are breaking the law in doing so.
So really, this is where a lot of like we'll see, for instance, Dove beauty products. They'll be pushing some sort of social agenda,
Correct.
and that's where we see that from.
Yes, and that would be under the social, because social just means justice, social justice. Um, Also under governance to some extent, but really that would be under the S category of the ESG. Is anything that is about, uh, sexism, alleviating sexism or racism or homophobia or transphobia, any of that stuff would be under the S category, and that's it. It helps. This is what This is actually what led me down the trail to figuring out why this was happening. Was I kept seeing these advertisements. The one that I always reference is Gillette when they started talking about how
Yeah,
men were sexual predators. I'm like,
yeah.
the best a man can get, and you're telling me I'm a predator? Like, this is crazy. So yeah, that's when I realized that's how it was actually happening. Is that there's ESG is essentially an accounting framework by which they can levy grades against your business, and the ESG scoring usually goes up to 100, and you have it's split into thirds for those three categories. And if your score is too low, well, then the biggest money managers on earth, State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, a litany of others, will not invest or will invest less in your business. And when they do so, it's devastating to your share value. So it's it's a very coercive way to implement what I believe to be cultural Marxism into the highest levels of corporate finance. It's extraordinarily nefarious.
Well, and it seems to be a corporate version of do as we say, otherwise you're going to go under. It,
Yes.
like
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's
just
the
pretty much what
it's
it
this
is.
it's the same coercive thing that they did with the vaccine mandates. It's like, either you do this or you don't have a job. Like, okay, well then I'm probably going to do it. Like that's how
Yeah.
most people react to those threats. I'm the type of person that reacts to those threats by saying, "Well then fuck your mother." You know, like
Yeah.
like I
Yeah, me
don't I
too.
don't appreciate being treated like that. And unfortunately, not enough people approach life that way, where they're just like, "Look, you don't get to tell me what to do with my business. You don't get to tell me what to do with my body or my money or anything. You don't get to tell me. You're not my
Yeah.
boss. I'm an adult. What is going on here?" Um, but a lot of people, they're fucking their wills have been broken over the years. I don't know if it's public school or if it's years of indoctrination through media and Hollywood, or if it's
Microplastics.
sure,
Yeah,
any of it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Probably a culmination of all of the above.
Yeah, personally, that's what I think it is. I think they're. Yeah, I mean, I was just reading an article earlier today where 50 testosterone is down 50% from where it was even 20 years ago in all of men, just the average man, and it's even down further from men, 50 years ago. And
Yeah.
I think that's, they're trying to give us bread and circuses.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many theories as to why that's occurring. I think that it goes. I mean, it's so multifaceted. I couldn't even give you a cogent thesis other than to say it's everything. It's
Yeah,
everything about our lifestyle. It's our food. We don't get enough sun. We don't work out enough, especially for men. Like it's vitally important that you lift heavy if you want to keep your testosterone up. Not enough men do. Um, it's also the social media and the tech influence on our lives where we don't go out and function with human beings in the world. You don't have interpersonal connection. I think that all of these things ultimately are very detrimental to our health, and it's very challenging. I mean, I am a professional work at home, do everything through the internet guy. It's you have to make a conscious, concerted effort to not become a soy boy.
yeah.
Like it takes effort, and a lot of people haven't acclimated to it. I think that the evolution of technology is coming at us so rapidly that human beings just simply aren't that adaptive on a broad basis. So
Well, and this seems
we're
to be
learning.
coming very quickly as far as like evolutionary
Yes,
terms.
yes, it is. I mean
Like
that's what I'm saying is like this is it's the technological the slope is basically parabolic at this point, and it didn't used to be that way. It used to be 100 years you would have a very dramatic shift in technology and things like that, but now it's like every 20 years we have an incredible shift, and probably it'll be faster. It'll be 15, it'll be 10, it'll be 5. It's like um
yeah.
so people are kind of getting ran over by it, I think.
I mean, hell, I just bought the iPhone 13 Pro Max not that long ago. I'm still paying on it, and they just came out with the 14,
Oh,
and I'm
every
like, what
year,
the
man.
hell?
Every year.
I mean, that's Apple for you, but
Yeah. Well, and
I'll
the
have
and the improvements are so marginal in the cell phone arena. I just got a new phone myself because my other one just fritzed out of the blue because I had it for like 4.5 years, and I'm checking out this new one and I'm like, this is the same phone. Like
yeah, yeah,
it's basically the same. It's been 4.5 years. It's the same phone, but I don't mean technological breakthroughs in the cell phone arena. I mean in
yeah.
other arenas.
Yeah, no, I actually had a my shop teacher. Oddly enough, we were in our engineering uh, phase of our curriculum, and that's what he was explaining to us was how technology will double faster and faster as it gets more advanced,
Right.
and it will eventually get to a point where technology, the advancements will happen like in a matter of like 72 hours. Like every
Yeah.
72 hours, there'll be something bigger and better.
Well, that's the idea behind Ray Kurzweil's singularity, is
Yeah.
that the technological improvement is truly exponential at this point, and that means that it just goes parabolic. And
Yeah.
I think we are close to that. But it's fascinating because I think that the potential for World War III, nuclear holocaust, like there's a whole lot of dangers that come with it because the technological pace is so rapid that it's causing great civil unrest and social unrest. And it's going to be interesting to see if we can actually survive that singularity
Yeah.
that occurs while not just warned of but hoped for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Just circle back just a little bit. So you had mentioned, Vanguard and BlackRock and stuff. Kind of want to explain just who those conglomerates are. Most people have never heard of them or Larry Fink or anything.
Sure. I mean, they're the biggest money managers on earth. So they're just the guys that the pension funds and the state governments and private citizens and uh, I don't know if I said, oh yeah, I did say pension funds. They they entrust their stockpile of capital. Usually it's retirees, but it's oftentimes middle-aged people that have investment capital. They pool it all up, they ship it off to Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock. Larry Fink and BlackRock have, up until recently, they had 10 trillion under management. I think it's south of 9 trillion now because the market's in such a bear phase. But we're talking enormous capital. Uh, that's close to half of the GDP of the United States. It's like big money. If you combine all of the biggest money managers, you're talking more than the GDP of the United States, which is more than our gross domestic product annually. It's really, it's enough capital to totally reshape the face of not just the global economy, but civilization itself. And that's their intention. And that's what Marxists have always wanted to do. They've always wanted to, reshape civilization in their image. And I think that this is how they discovered a avenue to do so. And I oppose it, just as I opposed Marxism my entire life. I oppose it even when it is funneled through what people call capitalism, because it's not.
Yeah. That's such an interesting point. I have had a lot of discussions with Marxists, Leninists, socialists, all just whatever little club you want to put yourself into. You're a
Right.
commie in
Yeah.
my opinion. It's all the same thing. Call yourself whatever. But I've had a lot of discussion with them, and I've always tried to have them explain to me exactly how our system is capitalism.
Right.
And none of them can do it. They point out the problems with our system, and we usually agree on that.
Right.
But then the disconnect happens when I say that's not capitalism, though. They don't get it.
Yeah. No, they don't get it. And I discovered this when I was on a panel with Jimmy Dore and Dave Smith. I brought up central banking, and he was, to his credit, he was very forthright. He said, I don't understand central banking on the level that libertarians do. I don't. And I was like, okay, well, you should probably remedy that. like
Yeah.
like if you are openly acknowledging you don't understand what to me is the fundamental flaw in our system, the reason that income inequality, the reason all of these things that you despise, and I agree with you, it is reprehensible. It starts here. Why are you ignoring it? I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. Caitlin Johnstone, I got into a little Twitter spat with her, even though I love her to death because she's incredible on the anti-war stuff. And she was, bad mouthing landlords, which I have been at numerous times in my life because I've been a real estate investor. And I explained to her, because she kept making this claim that essentially when you rent out your property, you are giving uh, an asset which will naturally appreciate over time. This is her preface. This is her premise. And you're having your tenant who has to have housing to survive, and you're basically a leech and da 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 da. Right? And I explained to her just very quickly, even though I knew it was fruitless and pointless. I said, "Hey, the only reason that real estate is an appreciating asset historically is because of central banks and zoning laws from the local government, because we can't produce enough inventory to satisfy the demand, and also because the inflating currency, aka the death of your purchasing power, is the reason that it increases year over year. So can we just focus on ending central banking and then, after that, see if you still think that these people are just predators.
Yeah.
She didn't want to hear it, of course. She said, no, because I played a game of Monopoly and I know how that ends. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. So I just moved on. But point being, I agree with you. The left, unfortunately, they don't understand. They don't
Yeah.
understand that central banking, at its core, if you don't have a tool for exchanging value that isn't manipulated from a central government, you don't have capitalism.
Yeah.
So from its inception, we are not capitalist. And then everything else after that, yeah, there's other issues too. I grant all of that, but it's you got to deal with the first. You got to deal with the first step.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you know, I'm not sure how much history people watching this know, but at one point in time we had gold and silver,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had gold and silver certificates, which was like a receipt that we could return and
Sure.
get get that value worth of bullion. And now what we have is like a counterfeit receipt,
Entirely counterfeit. Yeah.
like and it's being forced on everyone to be able to use. I feel dirty even holding cash sometimes, even though the I love the privacy of it. But I'm
Yes.
like, this is just nothing but debt. Like I'm
Yeah.
holding debt.
Well, I don't know if I'd say it's that. It's certainly not what it's marketed to be. Um, it's essentially a Ponzi. It has value as long as other people believe it, and it doesn't as soon as people don't.
Yeah.
Look at FTX. Look at
Yeah.
Sam Bankman-Fried. It's like it all works great until it doesn't, and it will not work forever. So
Yeah. That's
you have
true.
to decide, when you want to pull the escape hatch. If you get the
So
timing wrong, though, you're going to regret it.
yeah, exactly. It's the game of hot potato, and you don't want to be holding the potato when it all goes down.
Exactly.
So that's another thing I wanted to talk about was FTX and exactly what's going on. I personally haven't stayed on top of it. Um, you know, being a podcast host, I probably should have, but
It's
first
okay.
little, I mean, it's the
There's a lot
same
to cover.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything new for you. I did a show dedicated to it about a week ago, 10 days ago or something like that. And it's just a classic Ponzi scheme. I mean, the difference being that this guy had really obvious nefarious relationships with political leaders of both stripes, but primarily Democratic leadership, and the fact that he was the second largest donor to Democratic campaigns, uh, behind George Soros, who no one's a real fan of.
Surprise there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that the real question with it is, was it just a Ponzi scheme and a guy who understood the political workings because of his parents, because both of his parents were Democrat operatives? Uh, did he just know the game and he wanted to, run a Ponzi, and he knew, paying off these politicians would allow him to do so? Or was he selected? Was he selected by, uh, someone higher up in the government or whatever, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, to basically run an op that would enable them to ultimately roll out the harshest regulation framework imaginable against the cryptosphere, being the number one competitor to the fiat monopoly that they have running, the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world?
Yeah.
It's a fair question, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of it, but I think that that's what anybody who really understands this stuff is asking themselves over the past week or so.
So, I mean, to me, it kind of seems like just my somewhat limited involvement in the crypto sphere community, whatever you want to call it. Um, I don't. It doesn't seem like too many people understood exactly what was going on, but there was people in high places that did, and brought that to other people's attention, saying, "Hey, this is what we could use." Of course, this is all speculation,
Mhm.
um, but hey, there's this new thing. This is kind of how it works. We can funnel money, launder it.
Yeah, I don't know, how many higher ups actually understood what was going on. I mean, oftentimes with Ponzi schemes, people don't know. They're just greedy and they're just throwing money at it because everybody else is. It's very
Yeah,
common. That's what the vast majority of markets really are, is just following trends. So you see something that's, going up 2-3x year over year, and you're like, oh, I want a piece of that, and it doesn't really matter that it's complete bullshit. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's
just
true.
how a lot of people invest. But the way it actually fell apart was, I think it was the CEO of Binance. I think it was Binance. I believe his he goes by CZ. I don't know why everybody goes by acronyms in this arena, but um, he was preparing to bail out FTX, and he asked to look at their books to do so. So whether or not he was actually intending to bail out FTX, or if his true intention was to find a way to make money off of their implosion, because that could be, as a savvy investor, as a brutal capitalist myself, I could totally see an argument for positioning myself to profit off of the destruction of one of my competitors. And if I was able to actually look at his books and know that this thing was a dead duck, you never know. As you can tell,
Yeah,
I'm quite the conspiracy theorist. I always view these things from angles that may not seem obvious off top, but it's just because as an investor, like that's how you get outsized returns. You're looking for angles like that. And I'm not at all saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying it's a
yeah,
possibility. It's worth considering. So he says, yeah, we're not going to bail them out. I don't know if it was Binance. I'm trying to remember what company it was. It doesn't matter really, but just forgive me if I got that one wrong. But he tweets out or whatever. He says, there's nothing we can do for them, essentially. Like, and when
yeah,
that dropped, everyone was like, oh shit, like this company is
yeah,
dead. And they had billions of dollars under management. So big problem.
yeah. That's just wild, and billions under other people's money.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that
That's the
and
game, man.
uh yeah, I'm not sure why people go under acronyms either. It is really weird. I think it has something to do with the coins, BTC,
I think so
uh,
too. Yeah.
ETH, whatever. But
It's a marketing ploy, just like all the others.
exactly. So I'm not sure what that guy at SB what SBF or whatever he I mean he's like what 28.
I think he's 31 now, but he was 28 when he started the company.
Yeah, so billions for somebody that young. That
He-
that
yeah,
is insane.
that should raise an eyebrow off jump, that this dude at 28, he starts a company as a centralized exchange for cryptocurrency, and in 3 years he's one of the richest people on the planet. It's like, and on top of that, he's running promos saying, I don't care about money, I'm just making all this money so that I can cure all that ills
Yeah.
civilization. He's just classic embodiment of ESG. He really is. And I believe that ESG
Yeah.
is that level of fraud, but on a much larger scale. And so I just hope people are paying attention. I hope that when you see a guy like that and you hear him saying all of these platitudes about saving the whales and shit, like like the corporations that are telling you that shit, they're full of it too.
Yeah.
So they're probably, I don't know if they're to that extent Ponzi. Most of them aren't, of course, but be highly skeptical of any capitalist who tells you that their intention is not to get wealthy.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I don't know why I
exactly.
have to tell people this, but like, hey, self-interest still exists no matter how they're virtue signaling. So the harder they're virtue signaling, the more skeptical you should be of them.
Yeah, exactly. And especially you know, not trying to knock it, not trying to kink shame, but having orgies in the background with some of the finest piece of tail that $6 billion could buy you. you know, it's
Well, that's how you know that he was a
yeah,
capitalist,
yeah.
because he was behaving as every other rich dude does.
True, true. Yeah, it's interesting. Where are you sitting on crypto these days? Because I know that you've kind of been weary. I guess is a good word.
Yeah. Well, I was weary in December of 21, when it was at its all-time high.
Yeah,
I was telling everybody, that would listen, I think that it's a, a bold trap. It's like you're looking at a very heavily inflated market because we've maintained interest rates from the Federal Reserve too low for too long. And when that happens, there's misallocated capital that goes everywhere. And that includes, sorry to say, but also into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
and I was right. You know, it's I still am a long term, and even then I said I'm still a long term believer in Bitcoin. But in the interim, I think you will have much lower entry points. So if you have patience and you can go to cash, well, then you'll be able to acquire far more during the bear market. And of course, most people didn't listen because it was sitting at 65 and they all thought it was going to 100. And I understand. I didn't sell all mine either. Like I didn't go to cash entirely, just in case I was wrong. But yeah, I think that this is if you've been an investor and a money manager long enough, you can just identify these things when they happen.
Yeah. See, I actually have little faith in Bitcoin, not the technology itself. The technology, I think, was Pandora's box.
Sure.
It's out there, and there's no stopping that sort of system or that sort of idea. But Bitcoin itself, I have very little faith in that platform. The one I've always been behind has been Monero,
Hmm.
and it's strictly because of the privacy.
Right.
I mean, with Bitcoin, you have basically your credit card statements on the internet for everyone to read at any
Yeah.
point in time.
There's definitely downsides to it. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I think there's other downsides that come with Monero. Like if the government is going to crack down very aggressively, it'll probably be against, you know, is it?
The one that hides identity.
Yeah, I was going to say crypto guised. I don't know what the word is, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to look at that the least favorably, I would think.
Oh yeah, I mean it's already coming too. I mean there's a standard push of like, oh, that's nothing but for, the dark web and
Right.
nothing but drug dealers use it and stuff, and it's like,
Exactly. Well, think of the children. Yeah,
yeah.
I know all the
Yep.
arguments they're going to make already. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, but I think that privacy is paramount, especially in
Yeah.
this era. So, I'm not like I've always said I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I just think
Yeah.
that in terms of market adoption and potential for replacing the fiat system, I think that it is probably going to if I had to put my money on it, which I have, I think that it has the greatest probability of being a long time survivor. But I'm not at all. That's not to say that I'm not pro
Yeah.
alternatives. I think that I still recommend diversification, and I've told that to my maxi friends. I'm like, look, like I think that you're right, but you might not be. Are you
Yeah.
you want to really go all in on this? Like a lot of them do, and that's their cross to bear. We'll
Hey
see.
man, I learned something when I was really young, and that was never put all your eggs in one basket,
Right.
because then you
Exactly.
drop that basket when the
Yeah.
bottom falls out.
Well, I'm just gonna say, like, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you better be fucking sure. Like,
Yeah.
you better be 100% certain. And as a longtime investor, like, I have just never been certain. And even when I have been certain, I've still gotten some things wrong. So it's like you just after time, you just learn humility in this game.
Yeah.
It's like it's better to be diversified.
Man, I'll tell you something. There was something I was really sure on, and I talked myself out of it. And that was uranium stocks about 2 years ago. Boy, right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is-
I mean, with the inflationary pressures, I'm sure you would have crushed. But we've all got stories like that.
Yeah.
I had friends in 2010 and 11 that were banging down my door telling me to buy Bitcoin, and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I could have got it for I think it was under $1 at the time. So it's like you just never know, man. You just never know.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, that's kind of the fun and the heartache though, right?
Mhm.
You know,
For
you
sure.
win some, you lose some.
Yeah, and I'm building 6 houses right now, and like there's no way I could have known all the shit that was going to transpire. Like there's just no way because it's
Yeah.
multi-year process to build houses. Ended up being a 4-year process because the zoning laws in my area in San Diego were just extraordinary. And then you have lockdowns, and you have uh, you know printing of trillions and trillions of dollars, and then you also have the supply chain breakdown, which increase the input costs. You have issues with getting what's it called? Damn it, I can't remember. Basically, a right to traverse, some of my neighbors' properties for utility lines. I can't believe I can't remember the word for that. Easement,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, you have the most rapidly increasing interest rate cycle in anyone's living memory. I mean, it's just extraordinary. It's an absolutely extraordinary time to be an investor in any arena. It's very challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it's I keep hearing the term everything bubble.
Yes.
That as soon as something pops, it's going to be a domino effect, and every bubble will pop.
Well, I mean, the bubble has already let some air out. That's for damn sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't think of hardly any asset class that hasn't taken a major hit over the past 9 months. And I think that that is just hard evidence that the Austrians are right. That when you manipulate the, you know, not just capital, but the capital flows, the interest rates, the price by which you can utilize or acquire that capital to make speculative investments, things like that. It just creates malinvestment, a very broad based malinvestment. That's what I was warning of in December 21, and just the timing happened to be right. But I had been warning about it for a year prior, and then everyone's telling me I'm an idiot. It's like, so if you don't get the timing to like the minute, people think you're
yeah,
a sky is falling chicken little type. And I'm like, look, I've been a bull in 2009, 2010, or excuse me, 2010, 2011. I was telling everyone in my life to go out and buy any housing they could get their hands on, and almost no one did except me.
yeah,
So it's like it just doesn't matter. You learn after a while, like, people are not going to listen to you. They're just
yeah.
not. They're just not, because they are programmed to go with what the crowd is doing. So if the crowd isn't buying, they're not going to do it. When the crowd is buying and they shouldn't be, they're going to do it. It's just it's brutal.
So obviously things seem to be getting worse. I've been kind of having this mentality of at this point we should be bracing for impact because I'm not sure how much further they can kick the can down the road. I'm not sure if it's a indefinite thing if they could continue to do that.
Oh, it's certainly
And
not
then
indefinite. No, it's not. I
yeah,
promise you that. Whether or not this is the bang moment, I can't say with any certitude, but I've said many times that I think that 2023 will be the hardest economic year that we've ever had in the in my lifetime.
yeah,
Um, and it really, the sad thing is that it almost entirely comes down to the Federal Reserve, as it usually does, unfortunately. If they reverse course on their interest rate hikes, which I think is probable, um, then I think that there's a chance that we are nearing the bottom of this current bear market. But I'm not going to bet on it, and
yeah,
in that environment, it would be probable that you would have, uh, a real run in assets at that point, because I think that all the capital that's sitting on the sideline right now, if the Fed were to reverse course even a little bit, I think it would flood back into the market. So we'll see, we'll see. There's lots of rumors that they are already considering not proceeding with the rate hike in December. And if they do that, I think that'll be a real strong sign that crypto and hard assets and everything else is going to get a bid, as they say.
yeah. So I mean, I did just see, believe it was Discourse TV or one of those news channels saying like another 4 billion over to Ukraine, which seems incredibly financially irresponsible.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I'm not sure what return on investment the people who are writing the checks are getting, but I know the American people are not getting jack shit.
well, the American people are the ones that are writing the checks.
Well,
I mean, through
yeah,
through through inflation. I mean, that's really how these bills are getting paid, because we don't have enough tax receipts to be doing what we're doing. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's tragic, but I think we've sent them 100 billion so far this year, and because of the lame duck session, like, even if you believe that the Republicans are in opposition to this, which I don't believe, but just playing devil's advocate, let's say that they are. Well, it's very likely that the Congress is going to pass a enormous, continued spending bill for Ukraine that will last through September, from what I've read. And if that's the case, well, I obviously I hope that the war in Ukraine doesn't last that long, but that would basically mean that we have funded the war in Ukraine for its entirety. you know,
yeah,
and yet there will still be contention when I call it a proxy war, even though we are funding the entire fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But that's what it is. It's a proxy war.
Well, it's interesting to take the anti-war position these days.
It always is, man.
I have never had such a response back about just how I hate America and I want people to die. And I've
Really?
heard that same argument from
How
both sides.
how old are you?
Let's see, 30?
All right. See, if you were old enough to have been a hard anti-war guy in 2003, I think you would remember this is very similar, man. Like after are you dude, just trust me. After 9/11, if you were anti blowing up Iraqis, you were you
Oh,
were
I
not a
remember the
patriot.
news coverage, and
Yeah.
I remember it was all pro America. We had the Republican president, so
Yeah.
it was America or go fuck yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. And by America they meant, do you support bombing innocents?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's what it always means, unfortunately. But this is to me, this is even less of a justified war, just because at least in the argument that they made, it was these are the people that killed 3,000 Americans, in 9/11.
Yeah,
Like that's at least a reasonable argument to have. Like, okay, we should go kill these people because they killed us. Like, okay, but the Russia Ukraine thing is like, what's the fucking justification for this? Like,
yeah,
it's a dispute amongst neighbors 6,000 miles away. They're ethnically, very similar. Their heritage is. I don't want to go through the whole history of it, but it's like this is just we have no business being involved in it whatsoever. And they're
yeah.
also not a NATO nation or NATO member. So it's like there's no justification on any front for this. But yet, here we are. If I argue to the contrary, I'm un American and unpatriotic and a peacenik and delusional and da 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 da. And appeasing Hitler, all that.
Yeah, yeah, just terrible, just so terrible that you don't want people to die, and that we shouldn't be involved in this, spending money that we, shouldn't be sending over there. How,
Well, the
like,
the point that they miss is that it's like they think that if you don't want to support Ukraine, you are dooming them to death. That's basically the argument. But the reality is that no, I oppose it because one, I don't think that Ukraine would still be fighting if we weren't funding them. I think that they would have gone to the negotiating table and the Donbass region and a handful of others would have been ceded to Russia and there would be peace. Now, if the Ukrainians don't want that and they want to fight to the last man, that's up to them. They can do that. I give them full right to do so. But the alternative, by proceeding with the opposing plan, is that you risk World War III and nuclear annihilation. So, am I rooting for death or are you? That's what I say to these
yeah.
people. Like, are you? Am I really the one that's heartless, or are you an idiot? Because I think you're an idiot.
Were you surprised at how many people were saying things like, a low yield nuclear strike might
Oh yeah,
actually
dude.
be good for climate change or some
Yeah,
shit?
yeah. I mean, all that was unbelievable. I mean, that's what disturbed me so much about this entire year. And coming out of lockdowns and vaccine mandates, I didn't think I could be more disappointed with humanity. But they
Yeah,
they managed to blow my mind once again by thinking that you could have tactical nukes. Like, no, you cannot have tactical nuclear warfare. That's not how it works. There's a thing called mutually assured destruction. And if you don't mutually agree that you will not mutually destroy one another, it doesn't work.
yeah,
Everyone knew this throughout the Cold War. One nuke goes, every nuke goes. We all die. So no one uses nukes. That's the
yeah,
whole unwritten rule here. And now,
yeah. This isn't a video game. This is not Fallout.
no. Yeah, you don't get 25 kills in a row and then a nuke drops and then you start a new round. Like, that's not how it
Yeah,
works.
exactly. Man, man, my generation is stupid.
Mine too, man. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of a good segue into the other thing I wanted to talk about was within the liberty movement, not just the Libertarian Party, just people that are not part of, I guess, the duopoly. There seems to, that this huge tent that we've got people pushing for war, but yet claiming to be libertarian. We've got people pushing for all kinds of things that seem to not be within the libertarian realm, who fall under the libertarian big tent. And we even also have people who can't stand the Libertarian Party, the official party, and everything it does, and all they do is complain about it.
Yes.
The Loser Brigade.
Well, Antho Bishop.
Yeah, Antho Bishop.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, and Pete. I mean, it's a fascinating phenomenon where, like, if you have ever been even tangentially affiliated with the libertarian movement, like, you can't ever stop talking about it. I find it very fascinating. But I get it. I understand why. I'm sure they still have concern for the trajectory of it, but it's just like, look, if you're not involved, I mean, this is the same thing that Sarwalk said. Like, if you're not involved, then just move on with your life. It's like, but if you want to see it improved, well, then you should probably get in there and do it.
Yeah.
So that's what I chose to do. I chose to become a delegate and vote for Angela and get the Mises Caucus folks in there, because I felt like the Libertarian Party was off the path that I felt necessary. So we've done that, and I'm grateful for it. But yeah, I mean, the people that advocate for war, and except for wars of defense, I flatly don't believe you're a libertarian. So that's very simple. If you believed in vaccine mandates, I don't believe you're a libertarian. If you believed in lockdowns, I don't believe you're a libertarian.
Looking at you, Cato.
Yeah, I mean, whoever I'm looking at. I mean, there's a lot of people, a disturbing amount of people that came out with argumentation from a libertarian framework, allegedly, that argued on behalf of these things. And I just think that these are, I don't have a ton of litmus tests, but they ran afoul of all of them over the past couple of years. And I'm like, well, please stop referring to yourself as what I am, because you are not it.
We are not the same.
No, we're not even close to the same. And, I don't know what you are. I'm sure you're not like fully my enemy or anything, but you're certainly not one of my people. And so, yeah, I want that to be known, because when they run under our banner, then I kind of feel obligated to clarify these people aren't fucking libertarians. They're just not. I'm sorry. So, like, I'm not going to apologize for them, but I just want you to be aware there are libertarians that actually understand bodily autonomy and not, nuking the planet.
Yeah. So there's kind of this thought I've been mulling over. Both Democrat and Republican parties, and the culture surrounding them, they have this, all the commentators on both sides and everything, they have this like unspoken rule of don't punch left or don't punch right. Like, you don't go after your own people, you only go after the others. Do you possibly think that that's what has set back some of the liberty movement, because we've had so many of those people and it's such a big tent that we have to be like playing not the true libertarian game?
Let me see if I understand the framing of this. So are you saying that we should be gatekeeping harder?
No, I'm curious if that. So, for instance, I've never heard a Republican turn around and call out Mitch McConnell for being corrupt. I don't see too many GOP parties, like local county parties or like my state GOP party, being like, McConnell is garbage, we need to get him out of there, he doesn't represent us.
Right. Yeah, I think that's terrible. I mean, are you arguing that that's a good thing, that they're unified?
No, I actually enjoy the libertarians arguing amongst each other.
Yeah,
because I take part of it.
Yeah, well, I think it's healthy. I think that it's. I mean, unfortunately, if you have someone like Mitch McConnell, who's terrible, who is, but also a very shrewd political maneuverer, like, it puts you in a weird position of like, well, I know that this guy can get capital for my campaign that will get me reelected. So I'm going to bite my tongue, even though he's a fucking commie, I think that's the downside of having a real political machine that can actually get you power. Fortunately and unfortunately, the Libertarian Party doesn't really have that machine, because we don't have any federally elected, you know, politicians. So it's like, well, I don't have to kiss ass. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have to, because you know, Dave Smith's not going to get upset with me and then pull my funding for my campaign, and then, oh, I'm not going to become a senator. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
so I'll just talk shit to whoever I want. But at the same time, I do think it's important that, like, we have some grace for people that are 90% the same as us. Like, Justin Amash is a good example. I really think that he's gotten some things terribly wrong, but I don't like it when, you know, the hardline libertarians like myself, the people I run with, go after him for everything,
Yeah.
because he, in my opinion, bought into the Russian collusion lie, and he bought into a bunch of other things that I disagree with. But he's probably the greatest congressman, you know, next to Ron Paul that we ever had, and he also changed his. I mean, he became the first ever libertarian congressman because of that, even though he wasn't elected as a libertarian. And I just
Yeah.
think, like, I still have appreciation for that, and I think that it's a little short sighted to, like, treat him as if he is Mitch McConnell. You know, it's like, what
Yeah.
are you doing? I so both. I guess I'm saying it's
Yeah.
both. There's nuance to this. Like, you don't want to be so hard on people that are very close to us, but you also don't want to ignore if they're terrible. Like,
Yeah.
it's got to be,
Yeah.
got to
And
find that balance.
so like with Amash, I'm not a fan, but I would never dream of not calling him a libertarian, because he
Right.
is.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, he, I don't dislike the guy. He's just not my flavor. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair.
So that's just that. And so this kind of leads me to the ultimate thing I've just been mulling over. Of course, I'm not the only one. This has been discussed many times, but should libertarians be running federal races, or should we be focusing strictly on our states?
Uh, I think that the presidential level, we have to. Um, as far as, you know, congressional or senatorial seats, I think it's largely wasted money. Um, and I'll explain. I mean, I think that the presidential campaign level is, particularly with the marketing that comes with that, and the platforms that you get on because of that title as being the libertarian presidential nominee. Um, I just think that there's so much value in that. I mean, you can really reach a lot of people and get a message to them that they probably haven't heard since Ron Paul, or haven't ever heard. You know, who knows? So yeah, I think that those campaigns are worthwhile at the highest level, and then the lowest level. You know, the city, like, mayors and sheriffs, and uh, I think that's, once again, I'm very nuanced
Yeah.
approach. I think it's both, but it's at the extremes. It's the lowest level and the highest.
Yeah, and I agree with the running a presidential campaign. However, I would view it strictly as a PR campaign.
Right. Yeah,
You know.
that's what it is. I mean, you're not going to win, so
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't view it as a PR campaign. But
Exactly.
but if you're going to do it, this is why I was so upset with the Jorgensen campaign. Is, if you're going to do it, be bold as a motherfucker. Like, why would you not go out there and say um all the things that we actually believe that aren't popular? You know, like,
Yeah.
you want to reach people. Like, the only reason that we stand out, the only reason that we're special, is because we tell the truth when it's unpopular. Like, that's, to me, that's what makes libertarians so compelling, is that, like, we're the only political movement that says things that people don't want to hear, you know? Like,
Yeah.
that's powerful. That's powerful as hell. That's the thing that really shakes people from their slumber. You know, it shakes them from their indoctrination spell. It's what woke up Dave Smith, is when Ron Paul did it to Giuliani. It's like, and God knows how many other people, you know, were woken up in that one exchange. It's like,
Sitting right here.
exactly, dude. So
Yeah.
I just think that those are the moments that, like, you cannot be cowardly. You cannot run a, we're going to appease and, you know, mimic being something we aren't, to try and trick you into voting for us so that we can say we got 4% of the vote. Look how rapidly we're growing. It's like, that's fucking a loser's game and a loser's mentality. Like, you will
Yeah.
never ever win if you don't tell the truth. The whole reason that we have any appeal whatsoever is not just that we tell unpopular truths, but we're the only people that you can actually expect to hear the truth from. You know, like, that's meaningful, especially when you're just awash in deceit and lies and all the political campaigns that are out there. Everybody knows, everybody except for the most blue-pilled idiots on earth, and we're never going to reach them. So why would we try and reach them anyways, right? So you're going to stand out by saying some shit they've never heard of in their life, but at its core, they can tell whether they believe it's true or not. They can tell you believe it's true. They can tell you are telling your truth, and no other politicians do that. So don't ever fucking fail at that. If at the highest campaign level, like that, that's what the Jorgensen campaign failed at, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting because we have nothing to lose. We don't
Yes.
have anything. So those are the people you should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and on the inverse of that, we have so much to lose because
yeah,
if
true.
we don't wake up people, then we're going to be such a small minority that we can fucking be thrown in gulags. Like, like,
Yeah,
like we have a lot to lose, but we don't have anything to lose when it comes to the campaign itself. You know,
yeah,
like you get 5% of the vote or you get 2% of the vote. Like, okay, not really a big deal to me. Like, I just want to. Well, I guess if you get to a certain percent, there might be benefits because then you could actually get on the debate stage and blah blah blah. But I'm saying like that's less likely. So like the focus ought to be on being as bold and as principled and as pure as possible, and just letting the chips fall where they may after that.
yeah. And also, not everyone should run for office.
Yes,
You know,
of course.
their Libertarian Party has been pretty notorious for just prop somebody up, and
Yeah,
no,
it's a huge
that's
mistake.
terrible.
I think Gary Johnson was, the most opportune campaign time, in American history for libertarians ever. Hillary Clinton versus Trump, and to have him up there was just not good.
Milk
And
toast.
yeah, and I like the guy, but it's just like
I do too, but he's not a
he,
presidential candidate.
no, he's not, and he wasn't the guy for the moment. Like I know he was probably too green back then, but man, I would have loved to have seen what he could have done with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's my thing is I want in a presidential candidate, in any candidate, honestly, I want somebody to be able to make me proud to fly under that banner.
Exactly. Exactly. Like all we really have is our base, and yet
Yeah.
we can't seem to even appease them, and I think
Yeah.
that's weird. But one thing I've learned too, because my show's grown in popularity a little bit, is that like, man, even amongst the quote unquote base, we're very divided too. I mean, you have really like the progressive wing of libertarianism. Like I don't relate to it at all. I don't
Me either.
have I don't really understand how you went through the process of being a libertarian and then came away concluding that like race and gender matters. Like that to me just seems completely counter to my process of becoming a libertarian. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess I'm just saying
Same.
it's hard to even appease the base is what I'm saying. But I would
It
focus on
is.
the Ron Paul wing because I think it's the closest to the heart of what libertarianism truly is, and I think that it has the populist roots that can bear the most fruit. And so that's my preference, but I happen to be one of those, so I have obviously a conflict of interest. So I apologize to the progressive libertarians that'll hate what I'm saying right now, but that's my worldview on it.
Yeah, I mean we're definitely kindred spirits when it comes to that because Ron Paul's the reason I got into this in the first place.
Sure.
And I don't care who's flying that flag, but that's the sort of libertarianism that I'm following.
Exactly. Same.
And it's just interesting because I've just seen so many failed federal elections. And I don't think it's because we're libertarians or because of even the bad campaigns. I don't think it's because of any of that. We start with this premise that the federal government is just fucked through every level. So
Yeah.
why the hell are we trying to even get in there?
Yeah. Well, goes both ways. I do understand the argument of trying to reform it because the federal government is a very dangerous entity, and like if you have
The
allies,
dangerous.
yeah, it's the exactly, and not just the federal government, but the United States federal government is probably the most dangerous entity in human history. So
Yeah.
I understand the argument as to why you would want to get some allies in there. Like that makes perfect sense to me. It's very rational. but it's also, it's not very pragmatic. It's not very realistic. It's like, can you do it? Like the answer
Yeah.
is almost certainly no. So maybe don't spend a ton of time on it. But then again, I spend a ton of time talking about federal level politics, and so maybe I'm being a hypocrite. But I think the stuff matters. It's just like, can you actually get candidates in there to reform it? I think the answer is probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not. And at least not anytime soon. And I don't know that we have enough time to fix it before everything fucking goes belly up anyway. So it's like,
And that's my concern right there, is that, you know, at this point, should we be bracing for impact? Should we, I mean, of course we should be, but
yeah, you should be.
you know, um,
Whether or not
I,
it's like minutes away or
yeah,
10 years away, I don't know for sure. But like, yeah, you should be bracing.
yeah. And that's just kind of where I'm at. It's like, even if we get up there, like, okay, so Donald Trump is obviously an establishment man, in my opinion, and he just, out of 10 times that they ask him to do something, he maybe does 8, unlike Joe Biden, who does 11 out of the 10. you know
Exactly.
and so just those 2 times is what upset the system that much. So somebody even like him, like, say if we got a pure libertarian in office, there's no way they're getting anything done.
Yeah. Well, I think that I have a slightly more optimistic view of Trump. I think he does 7 out of 10. You
Fair.
say 8, whatever. We're
No.
arguing the edges here, but yeah, I just think that Trump is a really good example of whether you believe he was almost an insider or if you believe he was totally an outsider. It really doesn't matter, because the point is, what did he get done? What did
Hmm.
he really accomplish? We we spent more than we ever had. We didn't end any wars. I mean, we didn't start any. Thumbs up, but like, we didn't end any. We
Isn't
had
that such a low bar? We're just like, yeah, we didn't start a
yeah.
war.
Well, of course it's a low bar, because every other
Like,
president in my
wow.
lifetime has. But it's very tragic. But it's reality.
Yeah.
He also, you still had lockdowns. You still had mandates that happened. Well, I guess it happened a little bit like minutes after he was out, but whatever. You still had Operation Warp Speed. You still had the propaganda that lied everybody into acquiescing to all of this bullshit. And he not just allowed it, but perpetuated and perpetrated much of it. So I don't think that I mean, aside from some miracle where you get a Ron Paul, Dave Smith caliber guy in there that is just like true blue, you know, I just don't think anyone will have the courage or the wherewithal or the knowledge necessary to actually do what needs to be done. And you also have to have someone who's very shrewd and is willing to speak to the people. Like, he would have to, like, think about what you would have to do to actually end the Federal Reserve. You would have to get up there. You would have to have a nightly address to the nation where you sit there and you go, look, for 110 years, you have been being robbed blind. And I just want to, I'm the first person, I'm the first president to tell you this, so I'm sure not a lot of you are going to believe it, but we have to shift to sound money. And in that process, we're probably going to have to default on our national debt, and it's going to be extraordinarily brutal. We're not going to be able to pay anybody but the oldest members that are on Social Security. We're going to have to end all social programs, but this is the only way we can get back to a semblance of a reasonable economy. It'll alleviate the crony capitalist system that we're dealing with. We could end the wars, because you won't be able to print to have this consistent warfare state. Like, you would have to get up there and just explain it all, and then have the American people say, holy shit, this guy's telling me the truth. We're going to support him, even though the deep state is going to oppose everything. And then you just have to pray that you can
Yeah.
actually get it done without getting assassinated in the next 24 hours. Like, it's crazy what you're asking
Yeah.
someone to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then not to mention what kind of danger that puts their family in.
Oh, dude, everybody
And I
they
mean,
know.
we're talking extended family too.
You'd have school teachers that would be assassinated if that happened.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be like,
Exactly.
they'd go, anyone that was even foundational in your life, they'd be like, yeah, they're in trouble too.
Yeah, exactly. And so ultimately, I would say you and I are probably. Would you say it's fair to say that you're fairly white pilled, even with all the crazy shit?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I don't have a choice but to be. It's like, I live here, man. I'm a young-ish man. I intend to be around for another 60 years, I hope, and I have to believe that we're going to find our way through. And I think that with the advent of technology and blockchain technology and the internet, like we are at an inflection point that like we're either going to have panopticon level totalitarianism or we're going to have the freest world that human beings have ever known. And I don't think that there will be much in between those two paths, and that's very intense. Uh, but it's also like such an opportunity, and I'll be damned if I don't try my best to, you know, edge the ball in the direction that I want to see it go.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very well put. I'm definitely say I'm gray pilled most of the time.
Sure.
I'm definitely aware of the exactly how fucked we are, which is very it's very depressing and it can definitely take you down. But I'm with you. I have no choice but to be white pilled
Yeah.
that we're gonna come out good in this. I mean, that's one of the oldest stories known to just all of humankind, right? It's good always wins in the
Well,
long run.
yeah, I think that's the key is the long run. It's like there is even right now there is immense human suffering, to levels that we can hardly even fathom.
Yeah.
And I also live an incredibly blessed life simultaneously as this person lives in hell. It's like you have a very bifurcated existence right now. And I think for many people, it's a choice as to what you want to be in. And for other people, tragically, it is not a choice. If you're in North Korea, you don't have much choice right now. Um, if you're in the ghettos of Palestine or Syria, or there's a litany of other examples. It's like, okay, yeah, you probably don't have a choice just to like be hopeful and optimistic and have everything work out. Like it's the stack,
Yeah.
the deck is really stacked against you. But yeah, I tend to believe that like the most happiness, the most human, gratification comes from being an autonomous human being that gets to decide your own path and to pave your own way. And I think that because that ultimately does jive with the majority of people, not everybody, but the majority. Um, I think that is what we will strive towards over a longer time frame. In the interim, you get indoctrinated. You're told that the state is your savior and that slavery is salvation, and you get told all this Orwellian shit. But I think that because freedom ultimately produces the greatest good, it will ultimately be what humanity strives for. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of like whether it's 100 years from now or if it's 10. I don't know.
Yeah. Personally, I just don't see how such a corrupt, evil system could sustain itself. That's
Yeah,
my biggest white pill.
it
It's
can't.
like
Communism
there's no
doesn't
way,
sustain
right?
itself. No, it doesn't. I mean that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like
No.
it does not work, and because it doesn't work, it cannot persist. And that's
Yeah.
great, but it's also painful. So
Yeah.
take the good with the bad.
It's those growing pains.
Yeah.
Well, on that, I think we'll wrap up here. Honestly, thank you so much, Clint, for everything you do. You
Oh, no
produce
problem.
an amazing show. Thank you for coming back on. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you?
Sure. Twitter at Liberty Lock Pod, and just search Liberty Lockdown on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm there. Also on all the alt platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, thank you so much for having me, man. Keep going.
Yeah, anytime. You as well. Ultimately, after the tweet heard around the world from New Hampshire, the Happy Holidays tweet, which I
Mhm.
fucking loved.
Yeah. So did I.
I had this conversation with a lot of people that were saying, this was this and that and whatever. We need all of this. We need your show, my show, everyone else's show. We need people out in the field. We need all of this to make all of this work.
I agree.
We need the federal campaigns. We need the state level campaigns. We need all of it ultimately.
To me, we just need the most people trying.
Yeah.
Just like if you're just sitting on the sideline going like, God, I wish that they would do something different. Well, fucking do it yourself. Like,
Yeah.
get in the fight, man. Like we don't have a lot of time left, and we are so outnumbered. Like we need you. We need you,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel about everybody that's in this game. This is why I hate it when I see, other people that are in our arena that don't like me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why would you not like me? Like, I like you,
Yeah,
I like,
exactly.
I like everybody that's trying right now, because I realize like you're my ally. You're not my enemy.
Yeah.
I don't view anybody that's in this podcast arena as a competitor. It's like, look, I'm trying to fucking save the world. Like,
Yeah.
are you? Because if you're not, then maybe you need to refocus. You need to lock in. You need to realize like the game we're in.
Yeah.
The stakes that we're up against. And unfortunately, I don't think, like, even though people will talk about it, sometimes it feels as if people don't really understand. Like, this is fucking everything. This is do or die. So
Yeah.
I want everybody involved.
Exactly. And that's why everyone watching this, you got to make sure and go subscribe to Clint's show, subscribe to Rise to Liberty, subscribe to any Liberty podcast out there. Get the word, read the books, talk to people, talk to your neighbors. That's one of the biggest things right there, is talk to your damn neighbors.
Talk to your coworkers too. I mean, way more people agree with you if you just open up about it. Like, I know a lot of people think that we're such anomalies and like our ideas are so scary, and you're just gonna get reported to HR the first minute you open your mouth about anything. But like, who gives a fuck? Like, you only live one life. Be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, everybody, make sure and hit that like button, hit the subscribe, hit the share. Get this out to as many people as possible, and we'll get you back on, Clint, again, because this is always a great time talking to smart people doing good things.
Sounds good, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, you as well. Bye, everybody.